Imagine stepping into a hotel elevator late at night, expecting nothing more than a quiet ride to your floor. But instead, you find yourself acting erratically, pressing buttons frantically, peeking out as if someone is chasing you, making strange hand gestures, and behaving in ways no one can explain. Now imagine that footage becoming one of the most chilling and mysterious viral videos in internet history. This is the haunting story of Elisa Lam, and the case that continues to terrify and puzzle millions around the world. The elevator video of Elisa Lam has been viewed tens of millions of times. It shows a young woman behaving in ways that defy explanation, pressing multiple buttons, hiding in the corner, stepping out cautiously as if she senses someone or something is following her. To this day, no one truly knows what was happening in that elevator. Was Elisa being stalked? Was she experiencing a mental health crisis? Was something supernatural at play? Or was it simply a tragic series of coincidences leading to her untimely death? But this is not just a story about a viral video. It is a story of a young woman with dreams and struggles, a story of a hotel with a dark past, and a story of unanswered questions that keep resurfacing more than a decade later. The strange events captured on that elevator camera were the last known images of Elisa Lam alive. Days later, her body would be discovered in one of the most shocking and disturbing ways imaginable, inside the rooftop water tank of the very hotel where she was staying. The case of Elisa Lam is more than a true crime mystery. It's a cultural phenomenon. It's been dissected by internet sleuths, recreated in documentaries, and even referenced in television shows. But beyond the theories, beyond the speculation, lies a very real tragedy. A 21-year-old student, far from home, whose story ended in the most haunting way possible. We'll take you deep into the world of Elisa Lam. From her life and dreams, to the sinister history of the Cecil Hotel, to the final days that led to her death, and the theories that continue to haunt the case. But first, let's return to that elevator. Because everything starts with those 4 chilling minutes of surveillance footage. As we examine this video more closely, patterns emerge that leave us with even more questions than answers. Elisa presses multiple buttons on the elevator panel, but the elevator doesn't move. Some argue this suggests the elevator was malfunctioning, while others suspect someone outside was preventing the doors from closing. At times, Elisa seems to hide against the wall, as if someone is pursuing her. But when investigators reviewed the footage, no other person ever appeared on the video. Was she hallucinating? Was someone just outside the camera's view? Her movements, waving her hands in unusual gestures, stepping in and out with hesitation, have fueled countless theories. Was she under the influence of drugs? Experiencing a psychotic episode? Or could something darker, something beyond our understanding, have been occurring that night? It is easy to forget when watching this infamous video that Elisa Lam was not just the girl in the elevator. She was a real person, a daughter, a sister, a student with dreams, fears, and struggles. To understand the mystery, we must first understand Elisa herself. And so, before we dive into the chilling history of the Cecil Hotel and the disturbing events that followed, let us begin with the life of Elisa Lam, the young woman at the heart of this haunting case. Before Elisa Lam became a name associated with one of the internet's most chilling mysteries, she was simply a young woman navigating life, studies, and the struggles many of us know all too well. Elisa Lam was born on April 30th, 1991, in Vancouver, Canada, to immigrant parents from Hong Kong. She grew up in a bilingual household, balancing the traditions of her family with the culture of her Canadian upbringing. From a young age, Elisa showed signs of being introspective, thoughtful, and deeply curious. She was a voracious reader, someone who loved literature and often shared her thoughts online. Like many of her generation, Elisa used blogs and social media as outlets to express herself. On Tumblr, under the username Nouvelle Nouveau, she wrote about her dreams, her struggles, and her reflections on life. But Elisa was not without challenges. Throughout her teenage and early adult years, she struggled with mental health issues, including bipolar disorder and depression. She was candid about her condition, often writing openly about her experiences, the highs, the lows, the exhaustion, and the desire to push forward despite it all. In one of her reflections, she described herself as always feeling like she was on the edge of two worlds, caught between the desire to live fully and the weight of her inner battles. This is what makes Elisa's story resonate with so many. She was not unlike countless young people, trying to find her place in the world, struggling with identity, health, and the pressure to live up to expectations. She wanted more than anything to experience life beyond the familiar streets of Vancouver. By early 2013, Elisa decided to embark on an adventure. She planned a trip along the west coast of the United States, visiting cities like San Diego, Santa Cruz, and Los Angeles. Her goal wasn't only sightseeing, it was freedom. Freedom to explore, to write, to reset her mind. Traveling solo was both a challenge and a personal mission for Elisa. She believed this trip would help her heal, give her fresh perspectives, and reignite her sense of purpose. Her parents, though supportive, worried about her safety. Elisa had a habit of checking in with them daily during her trip, a routine that gave them comfort. For much of the journey, things seemed to go smoothly. She visited several cities, documented her experiences, and shared her thoughts in the candid, honest style that her blog followers admired. But when she arrived in Los Angeles in late January 2013, everything began to take a darker turn. Elisa booked a stay at the Cecil Hotel, a budget-friendly choice located in downtown Los Angeles. On paper, it was just another stop on her adventure. But the hotel she chose carried with it a history steeped in darkness, one Elisa likely didn't know about. This decision, whether by chance or fate, would place her at the center of one of the most infamous mysteries of the decade. To truly understand the mystery that followed, we must hold onto the image of who Elisa was, a curious, bright, struggling but hopeful young woman. She wasn't just a headline or a viral video or a case file. She was someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone who dreamed of more. And it is in remembering her humanity that the true weight of this tragedy becomes clear. And yet, the place she chose to rest her head in Los Angeles had a story of its own, a sinister story that may have sealed her fate. Next, we enter the history of the Cecil Hotel, a building that some call cursed, others call haunted, and many believe was destined to play a role in Elisa's tragic story. The Cecil Hotel was never just a hotel. It was a building wrapped in shadows, a place where tragedy seemed to linger in every hallway. To understand Elisa Lam's story, you must first understand the building that became the backdrop of her final days. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1927, built as a grand and ambitious project. Its founders envisioned a glamorous destination for travelers in Los Angeles, a city bursting with opportunity and Hollywood dreams. The lobby was lavish, adorned with marble floors, stained glass windows, and ornate fixtures. For a brief time, it lived up to its promise, an affordable yet beautiful place to stay. But within a few years, the Great Depression hit, and the Cecil's fortunes began to collapse. As the decades passed, the Cecil Hotel became less a place of glamour and more a refuge for society's forgotten. Downtown Los Angeles began to decay, and the area, now known as Skid Row, grew around the hotel. Drug addiction, homelessness, and crime defined the streets. The Cecil adapted by becoming a low-cost, long-term residence for those with nowhere else to go. What had once been a proud establishment now stood as a symbol of urban decline. But the decay of the building wasn't only physical, it was spiritual. Darkness seemed to cling to its walls. Over the years, the Cecil Hotel earned another name, the Hotel of Death. And for good reason. Since the 1930s, the Cecil became infamous as a hotspot for suicides. Guests leapt from upper windows. Others ended their lives inside their rooms. The number of deaths was so frequent that police began to consider the Cecil a cursed location. Locals whispered that the building itself invited despair, that those who entered with heavy hearts often left with none at all. But it wasn't only suicides. The Cecil was home to violent crimes. In 1964, a woman named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, a retired telephone operator, was found murdered in her room, assaulted and strangled. Her death remains unsolved. Other incidents of stabbings, fights, and unexplained deaths followed, adding to the building's sinister reputation. And then, the Cecil became a hiding place for monsters. In the 1980s, one of the most notorious serial killers in America, Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, made the Cecil his home. Ramirez would prowl Los Angeles at night, committing brutal murders, then return to the hotel covered in blood. He was said to walk through the lobby in his stained clothes, unnoticed, because by then, strange and disturbing sights had become routine at the Cecil. Later, another killer, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the Cecil while continuing his spree of murders against women. Two serial killers, both tied to one building. Was it coincidence, or was the Cecil attracting darkness? By the early 2000s, the Cecil had fully cemented its reputation. Locals avoided it. Travelers who knew its history called it cursed. But for Elisa Lam, it was just another affordable hotel on her journey. She could not have known the history embedded in its walls, or the whispers that said once you checked in, you might never leave. The Cecil Hotel was not just a setting, it was a character in its own right. Every tragedy, every crime, every whisper of despair had left a scar. And when Elisa Lam arrived in January of 2013, she walked into a story decades in the making. A story where shadows already knew their lines, and tragedy was waiting in the wings. Who was Elisa Lam when she walked through those lobby doors? What happened in the days before her disappearance? The answers lie in her final diary entries, her last sightings, and the haunting footage that would turn the world's eyes toward the Cecil Hotel. By January 2013, the Cecil Hotel was no longer a glamorous destination. But for Elisa Lam, it was simply a stop on her adventure, a temporary home in the middle of her West Coast journey. What she could not know was that her time there would become the stuff of modern legend, burned into the internet's memory forever. On January 26, 2013, Elisa Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel. She was assigned to a shared room on the 5th floor, a setup common for budget travelers. At first, things seemed normal. Elisa explored Los Angeles, updating her blog and posting thoughts online. She mentioned bookstores, cafes, and her fascination with the city's pulse. But almost immediately, other guests began to notice something strange. Within days, Elisa's roommates went to the front desk with complaints. They said she was acting oddly, sometimes talking to herself, sometimes leaving cryptic notes. Hotel staff eventually moved Elisa into her own private room. What exactly happened in those first days remains unclear. Some speculate her behavior was linked to her struggle with bipolar disorder. Others believe something darker was already circling around her. Elisa wasn't silent during this time. On her blog and Tumblr, she continued to write, mixing humor, honesty, and hints of her inner struggles. She talked about loneliness, about trying to connect with strangers, about wanting adventure but fearing the unknown. Her words, in hindsight, feel haunting. It was as though Elisa herself was narrating the tension building around her. Hotel staff later described Elisa as friendly but unusual. Some employees recalled small conversations, saying she seemed excited about her trip. Others described her as restless, sometimes appearing disoriented. By January 31st, Elisa was seen in a bookstore near the hotel. The store manager said she was buying gifts for her family, postcards, books, small items. She seemed calm and thoughtful. That was the last confirmed sighting of Elisa alive. When Elisa failed to check out on February 1st, her parents in Vancouver became alarmed. They hadn't heard from her, something unusual, since Elisa made it a point to call home daily during her travels. The Los Angeles Police Department was contacted and the search began. But the Cecil Hotel was vast. Its 600 rooms, twisting hallways, and multiple floors made it a maze. And Elisa seemed to have vanished without a trace. And then came the video. On February 14th, 2013, LAPD released surveillance footage from one of the Cecil's elevators, taken on the night Elisa disappeared. The world watched, and what they saw would ignite a storm of theories, debates, and nightmares. In the footage, Elisa enters the elevator wearing a red sweatshirt. She presses multiple buttons. The doors don't close. She steps out, then back in, hiding in the corner as though someone or something was following her. She peeks into the hallway, makes strange hand gestures, and moves as if speaking to an unseen presence. And then she's gone. The elevator doors close and open repeatedly, as if the hotel itself was holding its breath. The video went viral instantly. Millions around the world watched it, dissected it, slowed it down frame by frame. Some said Elisa was hiding from pursuer. Others believed she was experiencing a mental health crisis. And then there were those who claimed the video showed something supernatural. An invisible force stalking her, the building itself alive with evil. But whatever happened in that elevator, Elisa Lam was never seen alive again. 2 weeks later, guests at the Cecil Hotel began complaining about something strange in their water supply. And the truth of Elisa's fate would soon spill out, literally, from the very heart of the hotel. For nearly 3 weeks, Elisa Lam's disappearance remained a mystery. The police searched the Cecil Hotel, room by room, even bringing in dogs. But nothing was found. It was as though Elisa had simply vanished into thin air. And then the complaints began. By mid-February, hotel guests started noticing something odd about the water. They complained that the water pressure was weak, that the color was dark, and, most disturbingly, that the taste was unusual. Some even reported black particles floating in the water that came out of their taps. Imagine brushing your teeth, taking a shower, or even drinking a glass of water, without realizing what was flowing through the pipes above you. The hotel finally sent one of their maintenance workers, Santiago Lopez, to check the water tanks on the roof. The roof was not easily accessible. To get there, Lopez had to climb up the fire escape, disable the alarm door, and reach the 4 massive tanks that supplied the hotel's water. What he found would shake the Cecil to its core. When Lopez reached the first tank, he noticed something wrong. The hatch, which should have been sealed, was open. He peered inside, and there, floating face up in the murky water, was the body of Elisa Lam. Elisa's naked body was partially decomposed, her clothes floating nearby. The very same red sweatshirt seen in the elevator video drifted alongside her. She had been in the tank for over 2 weeks. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, the Cecil Hotel transformed from a place of whispers into a global spectacle. Guests were horrified. Reporters swarmed the building. The internet exploded with theories. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. How did Elisa get onto the roof? The doors were supposed to be locked and alarmed. The tanks were tall, heavy, and difficult to climb into. And once inside, how could she possibly have closed the hatch behind her? There were no signs of foul play, no evidence of drugs or alcohol, and yet none of it made sense. It was as if Elisa had walked into the water willingly or been led there by something unseen. When news outlets revealed where Elisa was found, horror turned into fascination. Guests who had complained about the water were traumatized. Imagine realizing that for weeks you've been bathing in, brushing with, and drinking from the very tank that held a human body. The story spread worldwide, from tabloids to serious news outlets. The elevator video was replayed millions of times. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Elisa Lam's death was no longer just a tragedy. It was a phenomenon. For the Cecil Hotel, Elisa's death was another scar added to its long, bloody history. Serial killers like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had once walked these same hallways. Countless suicides and overdoses had stained its past. And now, in 2013, Elisa Lam's death ensured that the Cecil's dark reputation would live on into the digital age. The hotel was no longer just a building. It had become an urban legend. But the biggest question remained, was Elisa Lam's death a tragic accident or something much darker? This discovery was only the beginning. The autopsy, the theories, and the unanswered questions would keep Elisa's case alive for years to come. And even now, a decade later, people still wonder, what really happened to Elisa Lam inside the Cecil Hotel? Elisa Lam's body had been discovered, but the discovery only opened more questions than it answered. Her autopsy report would take months to be released. And when it finally was, the results left both investigators and the public unsatisfied. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office declared Elisa Lam's official cause of death as accidental drowning. Toxicology tests showed traces of her prescribed medications for bipolar disorder and depression, Wellbutrin, lamotrigine, quetiapine, but nothing that suggested she had overdosed. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, and most shockingly, no signs of physical trauma or sexual assault. The report concluded Elisa Lam had not been murdered. But if this was true, how did she end up inside a locked, alarmed rooftop water tank? The findings only added to the mystery. Why was Elisa's clothing found floating separately, suggesting she had taken it off? Why were her belongings, like her phone and key card, never recovered? And how did she reach the tank in the first place, when access should have been impossible without triggering alarms? The autopsy closed one door, but it opened 10 others. One explanation is Elisa's mental health. She had a well-documented history of bipolar disorder. On her blog, she often wrote about her struggles, describing her mood swings, her medications, and her feelings of isolation. Some believe she may have suffered a psychotic episode during her stay at the Cecil. Perhaps she wandered to the roof, confused and paranoid. Perhaps she undressed in the water as a reaction to hypothermia or panic. And perhaps she drowned alone. But critics argue that this theory oversimplifies Elisa's story. It explains some things, but not all. Others point the finger at the Cecil Hotel itself. The roof was supposed to be locked and alarmed. So how did Elisa get there? Some former employees claimed the alarms often didn't work, or that staff could disable them easily. The water tanks themselves were also poorly secured. Ladders and maintenance routes made access easier than police admitted. If this was true, Elisa's death may not have been an accident or a suicide, but a tragic case of hotel negligence. If the Cecil had maintained its security properly, Elisa Lam might still be alive today. Despite the autopsy's conclusions, many people still believe foul play was involved. They argue that Elisa was too small and physically weak to lift the heavy metal lid on the tank herself. Some suggest she was being followed that night by another guest, a hotel worker, or even someone she met in Los Angeles. Could she have been killed and her body hidden in the tank to cover up the crime? If so, why did the autopsy find no evidence of violence? And then, there's the theory that Elisa Lam's death was not human at all. The Cecil Hotel has always been a magnet for stories of hauntings, curses, and restless spirits. Some point to the eerie elevator footage, Elisa's frantic movements, her strange gestures, the way the elevator doors refused to close. To them, it looked like Elisa was interacting with something or someone invisible. Others note that Elisa was found on the anniversary of another infamous Cecil Hotel death. Could the building itself have claimed her as yet another victim? To this day, some believe Elisa Lam did not die alone in that water tank. They believe she was pushed by something far darker than we can explain. The internet gave birth to dozens of bizarre conspiracy theories. Some claimed Elisa's death was connected to the tuberculosis outbreak that occurred near the Cecil around the same time. Strangely, the TB test used in that outbreak was called the Elisa test, an eerie coincidence that fueled endless speculation. Others tied her death to government experiments, secret cults, and even demonic possession. Of course, there is no evidence for these claims. But the strangeness of Elisa's case made people desperate for answers, no matter how wild. In the end, Elisa's case remains unresolved in the minds of many. Officially, the story is simple. A young woman, struggling with her mental health, entered a rooftop tank and drowned by accident. Unofficially, it is one of the most enduring mysteries of the digital age. Because the truth is, no theory explains everything. The autopsy gave us closure on paper, but never gave us peace. And so, the question lingers, what really happened to Elisa Lam? Elisa Lam's story didn't end with her death in 2013. If anything, that's when her story truly began to echo around the world. Elisa's case was one of the first true crime mysteries to explode online. Her elevator footage spread across YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter like wildfire. People analyzed every frame, slowing it down, zooming in, and interpreting her body language. Some saw fear, some saw playfulness, others saw something far stranger, like Elisa was talking to a presence just out of sight. The video became one of the most viewed and debated crime clips of all time, with millions of people trying to solve a puzzle that the police themselves couldn't explain. Elisa Lam's death also left a deep cultural footprint. In 2015, the hit TV series American Horror Story Hotel featured a hotel eerily similar to the Cecil. The show's ghostly atmosphere and sinister characters mirrored the rumors surrounding Elisa's case. In 2021, Netflix released Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, a documentary that reignited worldwide interest. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and TikTok creators continue to dissect her story. Some treat it as a mystery to be solved, others as a cautionary tale about mental health, and some as a ghost story. Whether we like it or not, Elisa Lam has become more than a victim. She has become a symbol. The Cecil Hotel itself couldn't escape Elisa's shadow. Already infamous for its dark past, the hauntings, the murders, the serial killers, it became permanently tied to Elisa's story. Tourists flocked to the hotel, hoping to see the elevator, the rooftop, the place where she spent her final days. Eventually, the hotel rebranded as Stay on Main and later shut down entirely for renovations. But even today, many believe its walls are cursed and that Elisa's death was the final nail in the coffin of one of America's most haunted buildings. Beyond the conspiracy theories and supernatural stories, Elisa's case started an important global conversation about mental health. On her Tumblr blog, Elisa was vulnerable, honest, and human. She wrote about her struggles with depression, about loneliness, about wanting to belong. Her words resonated with millions. To some, she became a tragic reminder of how fragile life can be when mental illness meets neglect. Her story pushed people to talk about bipolar disorder, to discuss how travel, stress, and lack of support can trigger devastating consequences. For this reason, Elisa's story is not just about mystery, it is about empathy. Behind every viral clip, every theory, every headline, there was a 21-year-old girl, a daughter, a sister, a student, a dreamer. Why? After more than a decade, does Elisa Lam's story still haunt us? Perhaps it's because it sits on the razor's edge between the explainable and the unexplainable. The official cause of death may be accidental drowning, but the unanswered questions, the elevator video, the missing belongings, the faulty locks, the eerie coincidences, refuse to let us rest. It's a story that blends crime, psychology, urban legend, and horror into one unsolvable riddle. And maybe that's why we can't look away. Elisa Lam wanted to travel, to see the world, to share her thoughts online. She could never have imagined that her final days would inspire endless theories, documentaries, and debates. But perhaps that is what makes her story so unforgettable. Because in the end, we are left not with answers, but with questions. Questions that will echo as long as the Cecil Hotel stands. And questions that remind us that the line between truth and mystery is often thinner than we think. Thank you for staying with me through this chilling story of Elisa Lam and the Cecil Hotel. What do you think really happened to Elisa? Was it an accident or something darker? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss the next mystery. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the true ones.